David Gatimu is a registered urban planner with an MSc in urban planning from Oxford Brookes University. He's a corporate member of the Architectural Association of Kenya's Town Planners chapter. In episode 2 of the Future Cities Africa series, focusing on urban governance and how to get it right in managing urban growth in towns and cities in Kenya, this episode will explore urban governance and urban management. David, welcome. What are the key trends in urbanization in Kenya?
There are two fundamental conditions that are taking place in Kenya today that are contributing towards urbanization, and that is devolution and the demographics that are driven by the devolution. These two combined together are becoming very powerful forces that are shaping the family, the social and economic arena. And definitely, it is having a huge impact on how politicians and policymakers are going to be shaping how Kenya needs to grow. On the devolution elements, this has created confidence in the local communities. They become more bolder, and this is creating what I may call an irreversible momentum for economic development based on a bottom-up approach. There are a lot of agitation and needs that are coming from the communities, rising to the structures of devolution. And therefore, this calls for more resources that are required to be channeled to the counties, which is having a huge impact on how people are enjoying the fruits of devolution. On the urbanization trends, and there are a lot of demographic changes that are taking place. If I may share with you, the Kenya population grew from 47 grew to 47.6 million. This is from the census that was conducted in the year 2019. And this grew from 37.7 million. That is a census that was done in 2009. In other words, this is a 26% growth, translating to approximately 10 million people in a span of 10 years. With respect to urbanization proper, the transformation of the urban population rose from 9.4 million or thereabouts in 2009 to about 14.5 million people in 2019. This is a profound leap, growing at an average annual rate of about 4.2% or thereabout. So we have about 15 strong population, which 15 million strong population that represents approximately 31 to 32% of the entire urban population. This is quite a remarkable increase from 2009. The 2009 figure, which was about 9.5, now we are talking about 9.5 million, which was then representing 23% or thereabout of the total population. So from 23% to 31% in a span of 10 years. If we have to continue with that trajectory, then Kenya will be having will be hitting the 50% mark between 2028 and 2030. So those are the kind of patterns that we're having in as far as urbanization is concerned in Kenya.
David, given the explosive growth in population, what are the key factors to consider in the social, economic, and spatial development in Kenyan communities?
If you have to consider all those factors, then we need to look at it with the population bands. And I'll still go back to the statistics. An enormous population that is coming up in Kenya is having a lot of young people. According to this census, 75% of the 47 million population is under the age of 55. That is phenomenal. And with the spread of globalization and information technology, this transformation, we know very well, is favoring or is moving towards having a lot of issues that are youth-oriented. We are having a new wave of this youth movement where we are digesting, the immense information across the internet and so on and so forth. So our planning specifically has to train its focus on the youth. If I may go back again to some of those statistics, the age band of 0 to 14 years constitutes about 41% of the population. This is the school-going age for basic and primary education. This is the age where you have kids out to discover. It's a discovering age. They are versatile, and of course, we know very well a kid of 1, 2, 3 years, they are already familiar in using mobile phones or digital gadgets. So we need to train our eyes. How do we handle such, that band? And of course, from a spatial point of view, what arrangements, what plans do we have to ensure that they have sufficient spaces so that they're able to grow in a very good, pleasant environment? The second band, that is between the age of 15 to 24 years. This constitutes approximately 19% of the population. And this is the age where we have young people who are sharpening their skills and talents. These are people who are harnessing their ability to apply the skills and the attitudes and the values that they acquire through the lower levels of the education. And it's at this point where we have secondary school, we have those people who are now transitioning to colleges or universities. These are the people who are going to become professionals, become skilled people in terms of practical issues. So we have technical and vocational training colleges that are coming up. We have quite a number of universities. So this age needs to be looked as such. How are we able to get them, becoming productive and, harnessing their acquired skills as they grow up? Now, the next age band is between 25 and 54 years. This is the productive age of the human lifespan. These are the people who are moving into the job market. These are the people who are starting families. And we need to come up with the proper plans, spatial, economic, and name it, so that we make the best out of this age. And then we have the age band that is, sorry, before maybe I get out of there, this is where we need to invest in a lot of big data, because when you're talking about this productive age, we need to invest in big data, because we are living in the ICT age, where the vast data that has to do with the land information management systems, the trading, the global dynamics, including some of the issues that are having a lot of changes, climate change, urban resilience, amongst others. So we need to have a lot of these big data being put in such a manner that we're able to translate it into our governance systems. And you know very well, these are the people who are agile and are able to prove and provide the right skills in ensuring that there is that stability. And then you have the age band of 55 to 64 years. This is translates to about 4%, a sharp drop. You can see from the very, very young ones who are 41%, and then 15 to 24 at 19%, and then the working band at 34, and then the 55 to 64 are 4%. We need to ask ourselves, why such a sharp dip? Does it mean after people retire, life comes to an end? Do they lose out on opportunities? So these are an area where, as planners and policymakers, we need to question ourselves. Why are we having this sharp drop in life expectancy? And it also translates now to the other band of 65 and above, which is about 3% of the population. These are the very vulnerable in society in terms of their medical needs, in terms of the many other needs around them. So we need to focus, because these policies are people-oriented. And looking at those bands I've just gone through, we have a lot to do to ensure that for every band, we have sufficient information and policies to drive the country forward, and more so within the urban arena.
What are the developments in policy, governance, and intergovernmental relations? And how are these reshaping how we finance, coordinate, and drive urban development?
Now, you've mentioned about policy, governance, and intergovernmental relations, and how these are reshaping. As I've just mentioned to you, we are doing now our 10th year of devolution, and a lot of things have been happening. For most of us who've seen the rollout of devolution, just looks like yesterday. And a number of things that have taken place, some of them have been a little bit slow, but you can't blame the situation because some of these things are unprecedented. No single governance structure is similar to any other in the world. So we can say these are very unique Kenyan phenomenon. And on the policy front, I would like to give about the levels, how we've been able to metamorphose into where we are. And on the policy front, I would like to start with our vision, a long-term vision, which is called Vision 2030. This was launched way back 2008 and broken into various medium-term plans, 5 years, spanning 5 years each. And the first medium-term plan that spanned between 2008 and 2012, we had another one between 2012 and 2017, and we have one that is running now, that is 2018 to 2022. So at the lowest level, each of these medium-term plan has milestones that touch on what the national government and the county governments under the current structure are meant to do. And if you may roll back where we began, that is 2008 and 2012, that's when devolution began. That's the time you can say there was a clean break from the previous governance to the current governance. In the previous governance, we had the local authorities, which numbered about 175. They were not very well established. Actually, of all these 175, less than 10 were very well established. I'm talking establishment in terms of planning. Most of them had some of the very basic structure of having a town clerk, a mayor, and engineering services, public health services. But when it came to matters to do with planning, they relied heavily on the national government. So, so that clean break and unleashing of those powers to county governments was really a hit to many county governments. They lacked the capacity to, to absorb that very quick change. So that was the initial challenge. And most of the governments, what we call the county governments, 47 of them, had the challenge of grappling, first of all, in how to accommodate the devolved functions, which were massive, which were coming from the center to them. So it took quite a while because those challenges were unprecedented. And during the medium-term plan of that's 2012 to 2013, that's the time now, most of them now, you can say they started now going through the baby steps, the crawling, the institution building, the capacity building, creating channel of more engagement with their communities. And some of the milestones that was called during that time were being referred to the statute that had come to guide the entrenchment of the governance at the county level. That's the County Government Act. And within this act, there's a specific section that is dedicated to guiding county governments on how to develop their local plans at the county level. That is the county spatial plan. Then you also have the county sectoral plans. And then we have what you call the county integrated development plans that now puts those two together so that what translates from the spatial aspect is well funded and given that focus on every sector to be appropriately funded. It was such a big challenge because yes, there were funds that were being channeled from the center, but these policies were lacking. So it was a little bit shaky. So the issues of modalities of revenue sharing between the center and the devolved units, that has been quite a push and pull debate. And one of the very key or some of the very key policies were rolled out during this time. And a good example is the national spatial plan at the national level, because the counties needed, much as they were doing their local plans, they needed guidance at the national level. So this was launched way back in 2015, because the 47 counties, as they were grappling with preparing theirs, they needed something to guide them at the national level. So most of the county spatial plans began at that point, and things continued shaping. And by the time it was coming to an end, that is 2017, we had another election cycle that brought in now another crop of leadership. That's where we are right now. So I can say in terms of policy, in terms of governance, it had been quite turbulent, but now it is a little bit more stable. 10 years having seen, the push and pull of what needs to be done, discovery of new territories in terms of, engagement with the communities, policy issues, and so on and so forth. So we have reached a point where things are getting much more stable.
David, how do we get beyond policy to see meaningful change and investment on the ground?
I would like to give that ground a bigger or a sharper context. We've just discussed about how the population is moving towards the urban areas. And during this medium term, the third medium term, that is 2018 to 2022, a lot of focus has gone into what now we call the ground. That is focus on the urban areas. And when this medium-term plan came, it came up with some agenda. We called it the Big Four agenda that looked into 4 areas: industrialization and manufacturing. So that if there's any investment that has to be done, it has to be given that focus so that manufacturing creates employment and the like. There's also universal healthcare, taking care of across the board. And I had mentioned earlier about the vulnerable bracket that we have, especially the aging society. And then also affordable housing, decent housing, affordable to many people, because the earning power is still very low here. And when you look at the levels of affordability and the earning power, there's a huge discrepancy. And then there's also the pillar of food security and nutrition. Now, these were developed at the national level. And since we are having a lot of people now coalescing around urban areas, we also need to look at how do they look into that. And we have now what we call the integrated urban development plans. These are urban focused, they are town focused, they are municipality focused. So we have what we call the Urban Areas and Cities Act that looks into issues of services and policies that are urban oriented to ensure that the people who are residing within those urban areas are able to access appropriate services. So for every level of urbanization, be it a city has a threshold of 250,000. For municipalities, 50,000. For town centers is 10,000, and then you have the market centers, which is a threshold of 2,000 people. So currently, investment is being given a lot of focus towards that, and there are many municipalities that have been launched in many counties. And for information, for all the 47 counties, every county has one headquarter which qualifies to be a municipality. Even if it doesn't meet the 50,000 population threshold, it qualifies to be a municipality. And as I'll be able to discuss with you in a short while, we have areas that are really urbanizing so far, such that municipalities are standing shoulder to shoulder, such that when you put together, they can merge into a city. So these are some of the emerging scenarios that we need to see how well they can be worked on to ensure that we don't have a lot of duplicities or conflicts with within those areas that are urbanizing at a rapid scale. So your question on meaningful change and investment on the ground is now gaining traction, that it is becoming urban oriented.
So, what then would be an essential kit or model for urban management in emerging towns that can be replicated throughout the country?
From your question, I would like to cling on to this word kit or model. And then there's this catchword, which I may say emerging towns. Yes, we are having a lot of emerging towns out of devolution, as I've discussed. And I would like to give this answer two approaches. The first one, we need to encourage as much as possible our counties to modernize their governance. And this has to be really tied on what I call three E's, which underpins public service, because municipalities and urban governance is about public service. And these reforms have to be centered on those three E's. That is the economy, effectiveness, and efficiency. On the economy, look of it, is to ensure that there are very, very clear linkages between the spatial plans I've just mentioned, and mentioned about the national level, which is already in place, at the county level, which actually are still being rolled out, and now moving into the detailed plans that are happening at the urban level, and which are focusing on every sector which is within an urban setup. Solid waste management, liquid waste management, transportation, issues to do with safety, motorized transport, non-motorized, and all that. And these have to be integrated through very clearly prepared urban economic plans. And these urban economic plans now bring yet another dimension: local enterprise partnership. We have a lot of investors that are doing business in towns, and governments wouldn't have all the sufficient funds and the expertise, but they can be the guiding pillar to ensure that the private sector is well guided in how to invest, and they can invest in some of the urban infrastructure governance systems, so that the operating environment, be it a business, be it a neighborhood, name it, anything that is urban, so that when now you bring the element of effectiveness, that's the other E, you need to bring issues of performance-oriented or results-based management within municipalities. You need to have very clear targets. If it is issues to do with water supply, solid waste management, you need to have very clear targets and keep tabs into how things are changing, which areas require more services than others. So this brings the dimension of ensuring that you recruit the best, you retain them by having to pay them well, and have a continuous human resource development mechanism to ensure that those structures are well manned, from the revenue side to the planning side to the technical side, where you have the engineers in terms of water supply, sewerage reticulation, all that. So that effectiveness has to translate very, very well in as far as the services that are supposed to be provided by municipalities resonate with the people who receive the services. The third and most important E is efficiency. And it is now all over in most of these developing cities where we need to embrace e-governance. We need to go digital. Many towns are having platforms. If you need to pay your bill, be it a water bill, whatever, if you need to get a certain service, you just have to log in, be it through your device or through a laptop. That's another way to go. So on that respect, we need to have a model where those three E's become the centerpiece of ensuring that services to the people are well offered. The second one, as I mentioned, is modeling and managing the scale of our towns. And I would like to give you the scenario of Kenya. We have in my categorization, we have three categories. The first one is what I do call the hypergrowth centers. And these hypergrowth centers are happening in the capital city, Nairobi, and they have what are developing into metropolitan dynamics. Nairobi is about 680 square kilometers, but the activities that are happening within Nairobi city overspill beyond its boundaries, beyond those 680 square kilometers. And those neighboring counties are also urbanizing very fast. If you take the population of Nairobi alone and the population of those neighboring counties all put together, it is almost is approaching almost 10 million. And the 10 million marker will make this a mega city in its own right. So one model I would recommend and is to look how we can be able to handle the Nairobi phenomenon, which I'm calling the hypergrowth center. What is happening in Nairobi? In the north, we have a county called Kiambu, which is 70% urbanized. On the southern side, we have a county that's called Kajiado, that is 55% urbanized, and other surrounding counties. So ideally, if you can have one center that is going to be managed as a metropolitan, it would be the best way to go. And then we have other towns in the other areas, as you had mentioned about South Africa, about Cape Town and Joburg, we have Port Elizabeth, we have Durban and all that. Similarly, we have towns in Kenya which are not hypergrowth, but they also, I may call them super growth. And one of the towns is Mombasa. Mombasa is a coastal town. And this one is emerging as a town that is being driven by the blue economy. It is the entry, it is the gateway of most of the goods that come into the East and Central African region. So by that impact, it has grown, in such a big way, such that it is spilling over to the neighboring counties where we are having a lot of economic zones coming up, quite a number of EPZ, but most of them are blue economy related. Then moving further into the interior, we have Kisumu town. Kisumu town is on the other extreme end of Kenya, and it is re-emerging as another hub that is serving. It is a lake city that is serving regional towns within the Central African region. So much of the goods that move from Mombasa to Kisumu, it becomes more of a hub that is connecting the port of Mwanza in Tanzania, things that go towards Rwanda, towards Uganda, and in that fight is growing very fast. Coming into the middle of Kenya, we have two other towns that are also growing very fast under that super growth description. And we have one called Nakuru and another one called Eldoret. Nakuru, as a matter of fact, just I think in the recent few weeks, if not months, was conferred a city status, and it is having a huge urban population. It has 3 or 4 urban or satellite towns that are growing fast. We have Naivasha, we have Molo, we have Gilgil. So these super growth cities, they also require to be given maybe a model on how to see how they need to grow from that level. And then the third one is what I may call the catching up cities. The rest of the country, since we are having smaller cities, remember I mentioned about the threshold of towns that are having population of up to 10,000 people, and market centers that are having a threshold of 2,000. So these are what I call catching up towns and market centers. We need to have guidelines. How do you grow them? How do you guide their growth? And so those are the models that I feel as urban managers and urban planners, we need to look at it that so that the challenges that are being experienced by the catching up cities or towns is not similar to the ones which are super growth towns. And the same thing applies now to the hypergrowth, which is Nairobi, and it's only one. And as a population almost now moving towards the 10 million. So if you're able to get that into focus, those three, then we can say as we move now forward towards 2028, 2030, when you're going to have 50% of our population in urban centers, then you can be able to have expertise in knowing which area do we give certain preferential policy consideration and funding, depending on the pressures that encumber them. So that's the kind of model or kit I would recommend and encourage moving forward.
David, finally, what is standing in the way of urban governance and urban management, and how can these issues be addressed?
This would be a very personal answer in that I believe in Kenya we need what I may call an urban champion. An urban champion is someone who will be able to appreciate the dynamics that are driving these demographics and the economy and the social, concerns that are rising by the day. We are now going towards an election cycle. Next year, we're going to have a general election. And this is something I can say, people who have that urban agenda needs to stand out, because that's where people are. And I believe if we'll be able to get a leadership that will be able to recognize that urban agenda, then the three categories I've mentioned, we can have them being guided from the center, but given a lot of autonomy and a lot of funding and resources, including twinning with other cities or towns out there that have been facing similar challenges, so that we're able to fast track. My take is that the slow pace we've been going through is, even at the county level, is having a leadership, more so within the urbanizing areas, a leadership that is lacking what I may call a model one will be able to reflect against. And if I may give an example or two, if you're talking about metropolitan governance, we know cities that have gone through the challenges we are talking about. Bangkok, which I believe went through this kind of challenges before it became a metropolitan governed city, had so many cities around it. Washington, New York, and other cities. So maybe we need to borrow from those cities that have been through what we've been through, so that we're able to fast track, because the population is growing, is unrelenting, is growing continuously. So fast tracking by having a right urban champion. The other one is ensuring that there's sufficient know-how in terms of technical capacity building, because institutions are not really of a big challenge, because if you put those and you populate those institutions with the right people, the right policies, we need to have maybe an auditing mechanism when you set the targets of how a city should be able to provide certain services, including the standard municipal charters. Then you need to gauge how frequently are these municipal charters, meeting the expectations of the population. If you set the targets of putting certain, goals in as far as providing services, the amount of water, amount of sewerage reticulation, solid waste management, if you have those targets against the population that is growing, then one is able to audit to know where do you stand, and where you are failing, what do you need to add to ensure that you're able to move faster to keep pace with the changing urban challenges. That's what I can say. The auditing mechanisms and the measuring, or what I may call appraisal systems, to ensure that there is a very clear match between the demands of the population and the commensurate services that are being offered to them. If you get those in places, then I can say you can be able now to make these, you can catalyze the urban governance to ensure that it is responsive to the population.